I would like to call to order the Tuesday, November 2020 meeting of the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability. We'll start with a roll call. Anna Abernathy, Jared Alexander, Bronson Bast, Teresa Chakraborty, Samantha Ginther.
Here.
Nolan Hinden. Ethan Horvath.
Here.
Jonna McGee. Joseph Nycomb, I'm here. Andrew Predmore. Dave Rollo.
Here.
Najala Ratsong. Okay, that is the roll call. And everyone hopefully has the copy of the agenda. I don't believe we have a quorum, so there's no, so we can't really approve or make a motion to approve agenda. So I'll go into the public comment. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to make a public comment? Please raise your hand or use the chat function to let us know. So I'm not seeing anyone who wants to do public comment. So next is a report from chair. So I'll start out by saying that we have 2 vacant positions right now. One is a council appointee and one is a mayoral appointee. So we'll be looking forward to fill those 2 positions as we can. If anyone knows of anyone who would be interested in doing this or who would be a good person to be on the Commission on Sustainability, please let them know and to apply through the city website. That's all in terms of the workings of the commission from the chair's point of view. Going to working group updates. We'll start with the waste reduction.
I was just going to say I'm happy to give an update. I know Anna just got on, so.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Anna, you're more than welcome to give an update. I can update on the restaurant piece at least if that works. And then you or either Joe could talk about the other stuff we've been working on. Does that work?
Sure, yeah. Sorry I'm late, everyone.
No worries. Cool. So I think we had mentioned in our last meeting that we are just surveying restaurants in Bloomington to see what they are offering in terms of takeout options, since takeout has increased a lot recently with the pandemic. So, and we're trying to see who is offering compostable or recyclable takeout options. And then we're also in the midst of doing that, we're surveying the restaurants to see if they compost or recycle internally as well. So I think I just started calling my first cohort this evening. Of course, everyone's busy taking orders after like 4:30, so I got cut off around 5. So I'll plan that better next time. But yeah, so it's gone really well. Anna's done a bunch of them as well too, and everyone's pretty cheerful. It's like 4 questions, so it's easy to answer and goes pretty quickly. So we've seen good participation there just through calling people. We haven't come up with exactly what we'll plan to do with the information yet. I think it'd be nice for it to live maybe on the Visit Bloomington website somewhere alongside the information that talks about which restaurants are offering takeout at this time. So still working on what we will do with the information. And I think it will help inform some future activities as well in terms of helping like promote the restaurants who are really trying to make sustainable choices. So happy to answer any questions. All right, cool.
Yeah, thanks, Samantha. And then as far as our other, we're working on a couple of items. I'm actually not entirely sure where we are on the agenda. I was thinking waste reduction would be later, but just we're working on a couple of other things. One of them is our composting event that we have tabled for the spring that we're just kind of discussing and still in the planning phases of that. And then the third item is something that Joe in particular has been doing a lot of work on, which is just more data collection and analysis, but of apartment complexes and management companies here in town, similar to kind of the food, the takeout project. I'm just trying to figure out who has recycling services, who offers those services. So Joe, I don't know if you want to say, talk about kind of your progress there.
Yeah, love to. I'll also add, a bit of a summary of what I've accomplished so far in that objective. And I put together a 5-question survey on Google Forms, and then also compiled a list of 230 multifamily housing properties in the city limits and 43 management companies. And then I have already sent out an email with the survey in it to 26 of those properties and 18 of those management companies. Just those are the ones that had provided email addresses, which made it easily transmittable in that format. And so far I already have 5 responses. And also I'm looking to learn a little bit more about what one of the questions is to learn more about what their stance is on on-site composting. So I can also hope to develop a case for either the city or private organizations for furthering composting on-site or potentially collection opportunities based on the feedback we get from these multifamily housing units. So I'd also be happy to answer any questions or share screen if anybody's interested in seeing the documentation. I'm also creating a bit of a table with some queries to try to help manage the outreach tracking and also to show the contents of the results as they come in so we can quickly analyze the data.
Yeah, if you're having any trouble finding a contact at some of these apartment complexes, sometimes it can be difficult with just the information. Email address, let me know.
Yeah.
And I can see if I can find. Sometimes the managers are outside of town, so it can be difficult to find the right person to talk to that's actually doing the waste management contract on site.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe that's it for the Waste Reduction Committee, unless anyone has any questions for us.
I do actually have one question that I wanted to ask to the commission, and that is if an email address exists for the Waste Reduction Committee in order to give a channel for organizations to reach back with respect to the surveys and the questions that we're asking, that would not be a personal email address. Or if there's not, is it possible to have one created?
You're also welcome. We have a sustain@bloomington.ia.gov. I could also forward, if it gets forwarded to my email, but I can forward it back to you if you just want to use a general email for that.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
sustain@bloomington.in.gov.
Yeah. And I did want to mention, since we're on the topic of composting, currently doing a partnership with the district, so the Monroe County Solid Waste District, on some business webinars. So the first one was on how businesses are responding to COVID. And then there's going to be another one on the 18th. These are all virtual from noon to 1. And the topic will be on food waste reduction. And there will be someone from Avers Pizza who contracts also with Green Camino Earthkeepers. So the owners of Earthkeepers will be speaking about their composting business as well. So if anyone's interested in attending, feel free to let me know and I'll send you the link for that.
Thanks, Lauren. Who, just out of curiosity, is that something, or who's putting that event on? Is it a city initiative?
It's a combination of myself and then Eliza Pokerel, who's the community outreach coordinator at the Solid Waste Management District. So we're trying to kind of highlight some of these businesses that have adopted practices that are worth sharing with the community and other businesses to try to incentivize some more sustainable behaviors and let people know where to find resources for that. So we'll be recording them as well. We're intending to do 8 of them, so 1 per month. We'll take a break in Christmas time and then pick back up in the next year. And then there will be one, the last one will be on climate change in June. So kind of relating to the climate action plan, which we'll be talking more about tonight.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Moving to sustainable business, I don't see anyone online who is on that working group. So we will move on to the policies working group.
Yeah, so not a lot to report on for this meeting. I did attend the Common Council Sustainable Development Committee meeting on September 21st, I think it was. Essentially, only thing worth noting is that, and Lauren, you should probably be able to speak about this too, about the EDA grant. But the Economic Development Administration grant through the CARES Act, the city is planning on, or did submit a grant application request for a new trades district tech center, which is essentially just going to be a space for co-location for tech companies for Bloomington and South Central Indiana. I believe if the grant does go through, it's looking to be done in spring of, or completed in spring of 2023. But that's about it. Lauren, that grant did get submitted, right? I know that there was a little bit of a timeline issue that the council members were.
Yeah, so the grant was submitted. It's going to be a bit before they hear what the results were, but
Right.
as part of the grant application process, they had to do a full concept submission for it. So
Okay.
it's promising. I mean, I'm hoping that it does go through. If not, you know, we have all the materials for it. And I think that in the end, a concept like that could end up benefiting sustainability, depending on what types of businesses would be in that trade center. So you could see clean energy tech businesses would be a great fit, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So really until the city hears back regarding that grant, there's not a lot for us to really do anything about it other than just keep tabs. Aside from that, not really anything else. There's a couple commission meetings coming up both in Bloomington that I'll probably be in attendance of in the next week or so. And then also Indianapolis has a relatively new environmental sustainability commission up there. I think Thursday is going to be their fourth meeting where they're actually going to be talking about the current and future use or recycling initiatives for Indianapolis and Marion County. I believe their two speakers are going to be Dan Parker, who's the Public Works Director, and then Allison Mitchell, who's Director of the Indiana Recycling Coalition. So be interested to see how Indianapolis is moving forward and if they've got any neat plans up there, how that could potentially translate to Bloomington, improving our recycling capabilities. And that's about all I've got.
All righty. So that moves us on to the climate action plan. And so Lauren, I kind of just rolled all this in together with the report from ESD. So if you have anything else that you'd like to bring up to the commission other than the climate action plan, please do so.
I think that's the main thing. What I'm going to do first is share my screen of where people can find it so that they're able to reference it if they're on their computer while I'm going through the presentation as well. So, okay, so there is a subpage now on the site. If you go to the sustainability page, and this is a draft, you can find the draft action plan. And if you scroll down, each individual chapter is linked. I will be doing just a broad overview. If you've spent more time in each category, we can answer that, any questions that you might have at that point in time. At the bottom here is a feedback form. That's just a way to collect any feedback people might have. It then redirects to a SurveyMonkey site. If you click on it, there's just some broad questions, both demographic and otherwise, in relation to whether you support individual actions in the plan, and then whether you support the overall goals, as well as an open response. So anyone on the commission is welcome to also email me. I'll be collecting it all in one place. We'll be doing revisions based on people's comments, but I will change my screen sharing to PowerPoint. Okay, so this is the first time we've talked about this draft, and this will be 2 meetings. So this is more just an introduction to the document to try to make it a little bit more manageable. And then we can speak about people's comments once I've had a bit more time to look at it and answer any questions that you might have initially. So I first wanted to kind of contextualize, especially for those that are newer to the commission, about where this fits kind of generally, both within the sustainability program and past efforts to address climate change. Back in October, the city released the 2018 greenhouse gas emissions inventory. And that was really to answer the question of how Bloomington in particular was contributing to climate change and how. So that's also on the website if you're interested. It's a bit of a technical document, but that was really just see like what are our sectors that are producing the most air pollution. And that's helpful information to try to figure out how we can most effectively address this. And that's where we've built the plan off of. And then back in January, before the pandemic really kicked off, we were looking at emission trends over time. So how are we doing now compared to when we made our initial climate agreements? And it's trending in the right direction. Although we'll have some new data to check out this year about how these particular circumstances of the year have probably decreased emissions in some categories and increased in the others. And then back in March, and seems like a lifetime ago, but we had released a survey to the public, and it was the first just broadly released survey about climate change, about people's perceptions of climate change. And the results from that survey, we had about 400 people respond, show that generally people are very concerned about it. They've noticed impacts in their own lives, whether that's been, you know, increased prevalence of ticks, increased prevalence of hot days, of flooding. And then there was different strategies that people had said that they support or don't support. And then this was back at the time when there was public discussions about a sustainability investment fund. So back on March 5th, we'd had a big event where we also got input, and some of you were there as well. And then basically for the last, you know, about half year, been working with mostly an internal group of city staff to talk about what are the best and most effective strategies to reduce Bloomington's emissions. And we've had some consultant help with modeling that back in September. And I gave a short presentation to the commission about this. We released a vulnerability assessment. So which hazards and effects can we expect? And then we're really in this important part. And this is a critical area where we've collected what we have, and we have some ideas about ways that we can be more effective in drawing down our emissions and getting to a 25% additional reduction by 2030. So looking at a 10-year strategy, and we're really looking to see what stakeholder support are for these strategies before going to council. And so the council committee on climate action will be meeting next Tuesday, just another opportunity for the public to give some response to this plan. So we'll have at least a month to be collecting comments, and you're welcome to share that comment form with anyone that you might think would be interested in responding to this, since we had a lot of interest, especially with the climate strike last year, and having a very discrete plan about what the city was intending to do about something that's very complex. So all that to say is this is just a step in the progression of, you know, our action plan of preparing for climate change, being aware of what's ahead, and really being effective and data-driven in our approach to addressing it. And then some might ask, you know, this just seems like another plan. Why are we doing this? I think that it's really important to understand how both we can specifically decrease our use of fossil fuels, but also anticipate that climate impacts will be happening and we need to effectively adapt to it. So it's going to be more difficult and more expensive the longer we wait. And this in particular is, you know, was identified by the community as something that was important, that people are continuing to demand for climate action, both locally and at higher levels, and really identifying what are the most high impact actions for that, so that by 2050, an aspiration of the Climate Sustainability Action Plan was moving towards carbon neutrality. So that would be, you know, producing no more carbon pollution and really trying to be a great global citizen and recognize that this is really crucial for the future of our community. And then you might be asking, you know, who helped identify some of these strategies to reduce emissions? We had a series of in-depth focus groups. The categories are mitigation, so reducing pollution across transportation, energy, waste management, water, and then also adaptation. So the adaptation ones are more qualitative ways that we can improve the quality of our adaptation, our response to climate change, and those are in food and agriculture, health and safety, green space, and a new category, climate economy. So green economic development. And that's really also being responsive to the current recession that we're in. So there were also other focus groups held places like Banneker and with other members of the community. There was one held a couple of weeks ago as well. So, and then these are some of the entities that provided feedback. And I would like to emphasize at this point that this is just a draft, even though it's a complete draft. We are still looking to see what people recommend if we're off course, but wanting to get a complete plan done by January. And then how does this relate to our existing plans? It's really just an action that was identified. So it was important as just an overarching city goal that we continue to engage citizens in climate action. And that sounds a bit vague, but that really means that we need to understand what kind of pollution we're producing and have a very metrics-based strategy to move us towards these reduction goals. So all that to say, when you do open the plan and you do check out the executive summary, you're going to see something like this: goals, strategies, actions. The goals on the right, that just indicates climate commitments that the broader community would make to achieve the reduction goal. So if we want to get to 40% reduction, here's the things that we need to do. And we would have to do all of these things to both decrease our emissions and then also be prepared. The strategies, if you go into each chapter, is, you know, how we'll get to that goal, general plan to achieve that. And then the actions are specific things that we would need to do. So that's a little bit, there's many actions. We can't discuss all of them right now. If you had questions about any of those as you read through them, I'm happy to answer them. You may think some of them are off course. That's the kind of feedback that we'd like to get. And then the metrics are, you know, how are we going to indicate that we're making progress? In each section, there's a specific type of data that we would track to see if we're going to get there. So if it's landfill solid waste diversion, it needs to be a certain tonnage reduction. And that makes it easier to see, you know, are we on course or are we not on course? Benefits, I think one important thing to emphasize as you're looking through this, not everyone is going to find the environmental benefit to be the most compelling to them. For many of these, it's kind of, there's a no losers in that situation. There's public health benefits, there's oftentimes cost benefits, but not always. And that's just another way as we look to communicate this, that we can get more people on board and excited about it. When you go into a given chapter, when I mentioned the goal, so it might just be sort of something very broad: decrease vehicle miles traveled. So the number of miles that any given you know, number of vehicles is traveling on a street in a year by 8% by a date. And then there's something more specific like increasing transit utilization. And then the actions here, like collaborate with Bloomington Transit to establish a guaranteed ride home program, and then some expected benefits. So we would reduce traffic congestion, reduce costs, reduce emissions, and then just also have a better supported transit system. Tried to provide some context as well under this so that if people aren't super familiar with the background of the community, they can kind of get some background there and how it might relate to existing plans. Like we have a transportation plan. And then there was a transit route optimization study that was set to be implemented this year, but with the reduced ridership, they're going to reevaluate that at the beginning of the next year. And then I think this is the most, this can be a little bit too in the weeds for some people, but I think it's really important. So not everything we do is going to have the same impact on how much pollution is reduced. You have different strategies that are really the big winners. So of the ones that we looked at, we want to, in this category, reduce emissions by this percentage. There's two big ones here. It would be accelerating increased solar and accelerating energy efficiency. So all that to say that we should really be focusing on the ones that give us our biggest bang for the buck. And that's really important for this commission because it's, you know, a volunteer commission, you have a limited amount of time. And so really looking at those high impact strategies, continuing to communicate them to the public and is pretty important. And I'm just going to stay on this slide for a second and then we'll go to questions afterwards. But this is basically kind of a cheat sheet of the plan. So however much time you want to spend with it, these are the you know, highest impact things that we can do in order to meet these goals. So for that 19.4% reduction, accelerating solar installations, energy efficiency, electrifying fossil fuel sources in buildings. So like people are using natural gas, switching away from that, and electric vehicle adoption, but also just reducing vehicle use. And then the big ones, and I'm really happy with the progress that the waste reduction group is making, is really increasing recycling rates, organics diversion, and diverting recoverable materials. Because I think that's definitely a category, and we've talked about this, that Bloomington can be a lot more effective in reducing the amount of waste that we're hauling outside of the community. And some of the rest of these, you know, they're qualitative, but I think that they have a really important role to play by, you know, increasing tree canopies and here coverage of the community by trees, increasing workforce development opportunities and green jobs or businesses that have climate and sustainability commitments, reducing food waste. So a lot of them are complementary, but this, and I'll put this also on our Sustainability Commission site as well and email it to the rest of you. But that's basically the anatomy of the plan. And then there's just some questions in there. So it will ask you about a specific thing and then your support for it. So it's guided with the feedback form. Or if you just want to give a general comment, you know, I think that this goal is too aggressive, not aggressive, feedback about how you think that it relates to both your individual commitment as a citizen and then also perhaps your organization or the community commitment to sustainability. So I know that's a lot. That's just a quick download. I anticipate we'll continue this discussion at our December meeting. Wanted to give you some time to spend with it. There will be further discussion at council. I'll be reaching out to more organizations and folks in the meantime, but this is the sort of initial look at it. And I will go back to the summary page here and then allow you to provide any questions that you might have at this time or just general comments as we move into next month's meeting, things that you might want clarification on.
I guess I have a question, Lauren, if that's okay.
Of course.
This looks awesome and is really exciting to me. I'm just kind of wondering, and maybe I don't have a like full understanding of kind of next steps. And I also admittedly have not really looked very much at it yet, but I guess I'm just kind of wondering, like, from a community member standpoint, like these seem like really great goals and advanced goals. And I'm wondering, like, is there a plan to not only set these goals, but like put like what kind of resources, I guess, are going to be put towards the implementation of this plan, or is it going to be kind of on just the current structures that are in place, if that makes sense?
Sure. So I think there's two pieces there, communication and then resources or additional resources. So the first one is that I think the outreach and communication piece can't be understated. I mean, if you look at the percentage of implementation that the city as a employer or a government entity is able to accomplish versus the cumulative effect of the community really feeling ownership over this is important. And I think that there's a big sort of effort that needs to happen about what people can do that is important. I mean, it can't be understated. If everyone feels like they don't, that what they do doesn't matter, then there's no way that we're gonna reach this. So the other piece of that I think is a level up from individual to, you know, organization or entities. That's some of the outreach that I'm planning to do along with other members of city staff to people that will be really pivotal into making this work. So there's obviously partnerships built in each of these. In the waste management side, we collect waste, but then we also have private haulers and then also the county that all form this ecosystem. And so getting their support in this is important. The second piece of that was resources. I think some of this was definitely reflected in the budget for 2021. We are in a difficult situation with the pandemic, that there wasn't any, you know, major increases in spending that are anticipated. But one exciting thing that is happening is the support for Recover Forward funding. So energy efficiency funding, both in the last 4 months and then for 2021. And the details of that I can share with you more as we move forward, but there won't be any sort of like major increases in expenditure because the local income tax proposal was not voted to be implemented next year. But I think that's just an important conversation about how many, like what sort of investments different institutions and entities will be making moving forward to try to meet these, and whether that's employers or, you know, school districts, libraries, nonprofits, et cetera.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, I guess just one kind of comment, and I'm happy to also submit this later, would be that it seems like some of these seem like they'll definitely fall on the shoulders of like the city and like public administration, but some of these items seem more like they're kind of in the hands of the public and the community, and really it is kind of up to the community to either embrace or not embrace these issues. And so it just strikes me that like some of those items seem like a great place where maybe some of the commissions could participate and help with engagement, is those pieces that really do require community buy-in. So that's just a thought for what it's worth.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Some of them may be out of the reach for the average person to feel like they can have much of a role in, but other ones really do require collective action, just like the situation we're currently in. People can understand that each person's participation and supporting public health has helped improve the community situation. So I think there's some parallels there that show that we have a community that's able to rally around supporting and protecting each other. And this is going to be an enduring challenge with increased impacts that the more Bloomington does now, the better off it will make it for citizens both now and moving forward. Or was there anything else, like and I know that you probably haven't spent a ton of time looking at this, but as you approach this, that you would be helpful to be clarified, or would you just like to reach out to me between the meetings? I'm recording this so that the commission members who aren't here right now will also have the ability to check this out if they would like to, so that they're not behind.
Lauren, I've got a question,
Sure, great.
maybe a couple, and you don't have to answer these right now, but I think they're worth considering.
Yeah.
One is local food, which I think is important for a number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But is it a mitigation or an adaptation strategy for climate change? I think it's actually both.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as an adaptation strategy, it's a very smart thing to do, because we don't know if agriculture is going to be workable in California or wherever we get our food.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think, a mitigation strategy, and therefore it should be quantified.
Mm-hmm.
So it's part of a picture of like import substitution, of replacing imports with homegrown stuff. And, you know, obviously anything shipped into the city comes at a carbon cost because of transportation. So if somehow we can grapple with that, I think that would be a good idea, and it would be a real boost for people to know that when they're shopping locally for local food, they're actually helping the climate, you know? So that's sort of a comment. The other thing that I wanted to ask as a comment is the waste reduction part of it, because I think just as a sideline, have you had discussions with utilities about the grease that comes to them every month? It's an enormous amount. This comes from restaurants. It's like 30,000 pounds per month. And it seems like a really good fuel source if we could turn that into diesel and utilize that. That would be a great way to a strategy for mitigation. Since right now it's taken to Dillman and it's just apparently left out to decompose. But my question was, sequestration seems to be a topic that's left behind in a lot of this. You know, there's energy production, for instance, solar photovoltaics, great strategy. There's also conservation, for instance, you know, reducing the leakage out of the envelope, the built structures envelope, things like that. But sequestration seems to be sort of lost in a lot of this discussion. We've got one strategy for sequestration, which is really good, which is planting trees, because they're going to soak up carbon. Of course, prairie plants do that too. But are there other strategies for sequestration that we could be looking at? So that's a question I have. For instance, Minneapolis is focused on biochar. So they're taking cellulose waste of one kind or another. I mean, I know we're cutting down a lot of trees, for instance, because of the emerald ash borer, and we would chip them, and I assume they just decompose. But if we were to turn that into biochar, we could improve soil quality, and we could also store carbon that way. So they're looking at that, and maybe that's another avenue for sequestration that needs to be explored.
Yeah, I think that's
anyway. I'll leave it at that. You know, I just wanted to throw those into the mix.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and continuing the conversation, obviously, with you and other council members next week, and we'll see. I mean, I think that we also have the benefit of some of the survey responses too about what people are concerned about that we'll be following up on as well. So I know that tree planting is a very popular strategy, and trying to figure out also to cite climate adaptive species as well, because we are losing the health of some trees, like you mentioned, just due to their ability to not withstand things like 70-degree days in November. So
yeah, hemlocks are probably doomed. But anyway, thanks for your work. This is great work, and I'm really glad to see this taking shape and moving forward. So I know it's been a lot of heavy lifting on your part. So thanks.
Nothing like planning during a pandemic, but this emergency hasn't stopped just because other ones started. So that's about what I had for today. I will put the link to the feedback form. Once you've had the chance to peruse it, I mean, you can spend as much time or as little with the document, but what we're really trying to get a sense of is, does this align well with what the community is thinking is appropriate for a community commitment to climate change? If it's off course, if people disagree that it meets their standards for climate action plan, like feedback on that. Also feedback on, the appropriateness of the goal setting, and then just in individual categories, put some questions about how much you agree or disagree with a given strategy. And then if the last section, if you go to it, there's a drop down with the chapters, and you can just do an open response. So that should give everyone the opportunity to either just blow through it and just give quick feedback for those that don't necessarily want to attend further meetings about this, or also would really like more in-depth opportunity. And then my email's there as well. So I appreciate that you're all here. I'm hoping by next meeting we have quorum so that we can discuss whether the commission feels comfortable in writing a letter of support for the plan. I will also present this to the Environmental Commission in December at their December meeting. So, and then this is just sort of a ongoing outreach need across our community and also the county, as they also, are experiencing the same issues, and then some different ones because they have, less urbanized area. So I will stop sharing. I don't know what else there was on the agenda, Joe, for today, if anything.
The only other thing left on the agenda is just new business that needs to be brought up, or if anyone would like to share new business.
Hey, Joe, I had a question. May I ask a question? Since Lauren's already anticipating that this commission might want to support this plan with a letter, would it be premature to have a letter draft prepared by the next meeting? And then, it could be voted on whether or not to adopt that letter or sign on to it.
No, I don't think that would be premature. There would always be the possibility of maybe making some edits to it at that meeting and stuff like that. But I think it would be reasonable to have a draft letter of support prepared by next meeting.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Do you want to enlist anyone to do it? I mean, I'm happy to work with you, Joe. We could do it through email.
I'm happy to do that. You and I, Dave, we can work on that.
Okay. I'll contact
I'm happy
you.
to help if you all would like some support as well.
Thank you. Who is that? I can't look at
Sorry,
everyone.
Anna. That was Anna.
Hi, Anna. Thank you, Anna. Okay.
Sure thing.
I'll email you both.
So if no one else has any new business to share, I will say that so we have a meeting in December and a meeting in January, and the January meeting will be my last meeting on the commission currently as scheduled. So in that January meeting, we will have to hold an election for a new chair, and we also currently don't have a treasurer or secretary right now. So also in the December meeting, I would like you to think about between now and then whether or not you would like to run for one of those positions. So we could hopefully take a vote then you could, I guess, announce your candidacy in December, and then in January we can vote as a commission for those positions for the next year.
Was your term finished, or are you stepping down?
My term expires on January 31st of 2021.
Okay, I'll sidebar with you in case you're interested in continuing or not.
Yeah, gotcha. So if there is no more new business to bring up, I will motion for adjournment. If anyone would like to second.
I second.
Okay, great. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday, December 8th, virtually at 6 o'clock. Everyone have a good Thanksgiving, and I will see you then.
Thank you. You too.